gonna get started. So I admit that I tend to go long on these presentations. I've done these like this one like about 4 or 5 times. I'm gonna try and be speedier this time. So I might move faster. I'm just trying to get through a lot. If I'm too fast, let me know. And some of it, the information, I'm just trying to give the groundwork really maybe for the families who are juniors, but just trying to cram a lot in. So I'm going to share and we'll get started. Okay, let me just set up and so I can, let me just get my chat going so I can see your questions. Okay. Okay, I do love, I see somebody said that they, most of the people here are juniors with juniors and seniors. That's great. Somebody actually said that they have a sophomore. So giving you kudos because that's even better that you're starting off that early. And it's perfect because you're saying that you want to learn the process and that's exactly what you should be doing. Okay, so tonight we're talking about college merit aid and how to find it. I'm just going to kind of emphasize that word college merit aid. The word merit, I find, or merit scholarships is used in a lot of different ways. I focus on scholarships that the college are going to give their students. We could actually even use a different terminology. We can say it's a tuition discount. You know, there's lots of different ways to actually term that. But the word merit scholarship is used kind of freely, and that can also refer to two other things. Usually it refers to private scholarships because there are private scholarships that, you know, are focused on merit. And then the other scholarship that it refers to is the National Merit Scholarship. You know, if you're a student that might receive that from taking the PSAT. So it's actually kind of a confusing term. I try and specify when I'm when I'm using it, what it refers to. So that's the only reason why I wanted to go into depth on that. Oh, actually, that was my next slide. So I didn't even realize. So that I'm going to skip through because that's exactly what I said. And so the money that comes from colleges, you know, they give out two types of buckets. One is need-based aid, and that's kind of like a whole nother presentation about how you would calculate that. And then it's merit money, which again is the term, you know, merit scholarships or merit aid. And the colleges are really using that money for lots of different purposes. You know, I could say primarily it's to attract a student, the type of student that they want. It's also a pricing, you know, scheme, sort of say. You know, they are figuring out, it's very much like the airlines, you know, and they're trying to do perfect pricing. And perfect pricing means, you know, how much can they or how much do they need to discount for you to make it, you meaning your student and your family, to make it acceptable that you're willing to come. And they've got big companies behind them trying to figure this out with models and everything. But you know, I think it's a combination of, I would say it's a combination of both. You know, they are trying to reward students that are academically achieving, and they're trying to attract those students to their school. Plus, they're trying to honestly figure out their own revenue revenue goals and trying to get certain types of families in by attracting them with money. So some important things to know about merit scholarship / merit aid is that it is renewable, which is good, which is a big difference between need-based aid. So need-based aid, you might get it every year, but the amount's going to change. Merit scholarships, whatever they give you a student in freshman year, is going to continue. They do usually put in some sort of a requirement. It's really important to know what that requirement is. It's obviously usually a GPA. Sometimes it's very reasonable. Sometimes it's not. So I've seen merit scholarships with the minimum GPA is a 3.5. You know, depending on your student, particularly freshman year, that might, you know, be tricky. You know, students start freshman year, it's different than high school. Anyhow, it may not be as easy as they thought to get a 3.5, even though they were a good student in high school. anyhow, my point is know what that GPA requirement is. Make sure your student knows it. Make sure it's reasonable, because the worst thing would be that your student gets a merit scholarship. You use that merit scholarship to rely on being able to afford the school, and then somewhere during the 4 years, your student loses the merit scholarship. So it's, you know, could be a big financial implication. And then the last point, which I'm kind of curious to see with the pandemic and everything, what's happening with tuition increases, but the reality is that the merit scholarship, whatever the amount is that they give you at the beginning, you know, let's just say it's 20,000, it's 20,000 for 4 years, even though the tuition may increase. So again, I kind of point that out because it's important that people do 4-year projections of what college is going to cost. And so as part of your projection, and if your student gets a merit scholarship, you should always be on the conservative side, increase the tuition every year. You know, in this environment, colleges may not, you know, increase the tuition. We're already seeing some colleges for this year that have decreased versus last year, but, you know, there's no guarantee. So I would err on the side of kind of being overcautious.
Oh, can I say like in space in continue on?
Okay. I just want to make sure. I'm gonna mute you guys. Okay, here we go again. Okay, so there are 3, I'm just giving you the quick overview. There are 3 types of merit aid, and I'll go through them, but let's start with the first time, which is automatic. So as the name implies, basically your student applies to the school, and you don't have to do, or he or she does not have to do an additional application, additional essay. It's just that that school kind of reviews all the applications that come through and apply it against whatever criteria they're using to give out their money, and it's going to be automatic. A lot of the schools who provide the automatic type of aid usually put their information on the website in some sort of a grid. Usually, you know, there's no guarantee in this whole process, and the biggest, the 2 words that you hear too often is the word "it depends," because there's no, you know, rhyme or reason to a lot of this, other than that each school kind of can decide how they want to do things. And so again, a lot of schools that give money out automatically have this grid, and I'll show you some examples, but a lot of schools who give out money automatically don't have the grid, you know. So the other thing I will tell families all the time is ask questions. Call the admissions office, call the financial aid office, you know, actually as much as possible, coach your child to make these phone calls, but it is perfectly fine to be asking these questions. I'll give you a quick anecdote. I don't know if, and maybe you've heard this, you know, through my other Facebook Lives or webinars, or even on the Paying for College 101 group, but I have a high school senior, just like a lot of the people here. And so I'm going through the process right now with you. It's also the 3rd time I'm going through the process, but like, what a year, right, to go through this. And I'm bringing up the story about, there was a particular school that my son kept sending his question to the admissions rep. And it was actually a pretty important question. We could not find the answer on the website. It actually also would affect whether or not he potentially was going to apply early decision to them. And they just were not answering the question. Simultaneously, this school in particular, as opposed to other schools, and I'd be curious if you guys have had similar experience, this school was sending my husband and myself like tremendous amount of marketing to parents. It was clearly parent marketing. I mean, nonstop with emails and phone calls to the house. So one day my husband actually answered the phone and, you know, and basically said, look, my son has asked this question over and over. You're marketing to us nonstop. Answer his question. So, and I think they were embarrassed, and they finally got the answer to him. But anyhow, just an example. Don't be afraid to ask questions. You need answers, and they should be held accountable. Okay, so an example of an automatic merit scholarship. So this is actually Miami University. On the left is what they're doing for this year, 2021. On the right is what they did last year, 2020. The reason why I wanted to show you is, yes, there is this shift because of being test optional, that some of the schools that are doing these grids are not including the test score on their grids. Does it mean that they're not looking at it? We don't know. And probably if just the word test optional is exactly what it means. Some schools, you're not required to attend in the test, but some schools, if the student is sending in the test, they're still looking at the tests. Otherwise, if they truly weren't looking at the test, they would use the words test blind, but that's not the case. I haven't done the math necessarily between what they did in 2020 and 2021, but a lot of schools, even though they are moving to only relying on the GPA, they have factored in the test scores that they've seen in students in previous years. So basically what they're trying to do is have, tiers of buckets. And they, again, in their modeling and calculations have figured out, we can only afford to give away, the $21,000 to full tuition for the kid who has the 3.95, GPA. We can only afford to give that away to a certain number of students. So we're going to look at our past history of students and stratify and figure out how many fell into that top bucket. So we can expect that that's the amount of, that we're going to aim to fall into the top bucket this year. So they are just using their budget and figuring out, how to spend it wisely to attract the students that they want academically. So I see a quick question that I'll answer. Do you have to submit a FAFSA for merit aid? It's a good question. It comes up a lot. I hate to answer it with the phrase, but I am going to say it depends. So some schools require it, and I'll tell you why. Some schools don't. If it's not clear on the website, and again, for one of my kids, this was 3 years ago, it was not clear on the website whether it was required or not. I called up. Turns out it was not required. But so call the school and confirm if you can't see it on the website whether or not they truly need the FAFSA. Here's the reason why some schools might require the FAFSA for merit aid, and the reason is they want to confirm that you're not eligible for need-based aid. Again, I'm just trying to give you the rationale behind, how the colleges work. They have certain buckets of money. If they have a bucket of money for need-based aid and you qualify for it, they want to take the money out from there. So that's really the reason why they're asking for the FAFSA. It's not anything else. It's not trying to kind of see your full financial situation and then decide whether or not they're going to give you student merit. They truly will give merit money based on whatever their criteria is, SAT, GPA, an essay, an application, something like that. And if they're asking for FAFSA, it's because they want to confirm that your family doesn't have need-based aid. Okay. Here's just another example of automatic merit aid. Again, so this is from 2021. Michigan State is showing both the SAT and ACT score and the GPA, and kind of showing you where the student would fall. And they're kind of also emphasizing you can apply without a test score and you'll still be eligible, and they're going to do this holistic review. So I think that coming out of this season, this admission season, it will be very interesting to see all of these stats. The colleges are saying that they're going to do things a certain way. I'm not claiming that they're not, but numbers at the end of the season will tell really, how this all turned out. Okay, so I switched. So that was automatic merit aid. So there is what we would term, competitive merit aid, and that is merit scholarships. And that is when the college asks you, it says, yes, we give out merit scholarships, but we're not going to automatically give it out to everybody. We're going to ask you to kind of show that you're interested, and you're going to need to probably fill in a separate application and or a separate essay. And most importantly, usually there's a deadline associated with this. So the reason why I emphasize deadline is because if a school has a deadline for merit aid, a lot of times it is also earlier than the regular decision deadline. So again, really important to know those deadlines. Best place I would say the final and only place to confirm those deadlines is the website. I'll just kind of tell this story that I saw somebody posted. It's actually not related to merit aid, but it was related to Florida, FSU, Florida State University. This student was interested in applying there, or I think they did apply. This is just a story that somebody posted on the Facebook group. And the mother said that they had thought it was test optional. Her daughter claimed she saw it as being test optional, but the FSU was requiring the test scores. So, and people were saying, oh, well, you know, tell them that you thought it was test optional. You know what, I in some ways it doesn't matter. And that's a whole nother story, what's going on in Florida. But the point what I wanted to bring the story up is that the college website is the ultimate, the final source of information. So it doesn't matter if you saw it on a different search site, you know, it matters what the what's on the college's website. And so it's great to use other search sites because it will kind of narrow things down. But in the end, when you have like the final list of maybe even like kind of like before the final, maybe you have 15, 20 schools, I would go to the college website and confirm any information there. And again, if it's not clear, always call them. Okay, this is just some quick examples of competitive merit aid. This one on the right, sorry, the one on the left is from University of Southern California. Just wanted you to show that they have a December 1st deadline for merit scholarships. That's hard and fast. So if you're, as an example, your student is interested in applying to USC, they have to apply by December 1st, or they won't be to be considered for merit scholarships. Oops, sorry. This, the other school on the right, I'm pretty sure I picked this from Vanderbilt. And this is just, it kind of gives you an idea. They're giving you more information about their merit scholarships, saying the competition is pretty hard. This is directly from their websites. And so although they don't have a grid, they're kind of giving you a hint that students in the past, you know, had SAT scores of above 500, ACT scores of above 3,300. And, you know, the one thing I wanted to say is I should pick another school next time as my example that's not necessarily this competitive. You know, these are kind of competitive elite schools. There are a lot of schools that your child can get a merit scholarship from, and they don't have to have an SAT score of 1,500. But I'll show you later how we can search for that. So I want to apologize. I don't want you to kind of get the impression that your student has to be at the top, like nationally, to get a merit scholarship. There are plenty of places where they can get merit scholarships, and you know they have a different range of scores and GPAs. Here's another example from American, and I think the one on the right is from BU, showing you that these schools are asking for a separate application to apply to certain scholarships. I think the one on the right here, oh no, sorry, this one on the right is from Vanderbilt, is actually kind of saying that your student has to apply, and then once they apply and they get their portal, then they can go in and fill out the special application for merit scholarships. So again, I'm bringing this up just to kind of point out different schools have different ways of handling it. Don't wait till the last minute to figure that out. You know, kind of look in advance on the school website. You know, hopefully you have some way that you're tracking and working with your student about the different applications that they need to fill out, and each school has different requirements. So obviously I would make like another column that says, you know, merit scholarships, anything extra that they need to do, and then identify what that is. Okay, and then the third type of merit scholarship is based on talent. And so it's usually, you know, related to art, music, dance, theater. And these generally have some sort of an audition or a portfolio that you have to send in. This year, probably a lot of it's gonna, it is going to be done by Zoom. So, but the point here is that these also usually have deadlines because you have to make appointments, you know, for the audition or for your portfolio review. So find that information out in advance. This is just an example from Muhlenberg to show you to schedule an audition. or portfolio, please contact the different department heads. So again, there might be some extra steps that your student needs to do. So just make sure that they know what those steps are. Sorry, I got stuck. Okay, whoops, sorry. Okay, so I actually got through that faster than I normally do, so I'm glad. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with the term enrollment management, but I just like to throw it out there because that is really what the admissions office has become these days. And that's kind of what they are even calling themselves in enrollment management professionals. It's not bad. I just like to make people aware that, college is a business. I think in our generation, I know, and even honestly, before I got involved in this space, I used to think a little bit more ivory tower, about like academia and kind of like that they were on a different, I don't know, pedestal or a different level. But the end of the day, at least, in the past few years or longer, colleges are a business. They have to meet certain goals, and particularly the people who work in admissions/enrollment, their goal is revenue, and they have to meet, some number of enrollment goals. And so that's why there cropped up all these other companies that are involved to support colleges. I'm giving you some of the bigger, I just, again, kind of out of curiosity, sharing this information, showing you, these are the two of the bigger companies that work with colleges. One is Ruffalo Noel Levitz, and the other is EAB. And these are companies that do modeling for colleges. They help them figure out what their strategy should be. And going back to, college being a business, how should they spend their budget? And you can think of their scholarship money as their budget. And how do they even spend, their marketing dollars in general? So the other thing I like to make people aware of is that there's a lot of crossover interconnections between these bigger companies. So for example, maybe a lot of you are familiar with Naviance because that is what's used in your school. Just as an FYI, Naviance is owned by Hobson's, which is a very big educational company. And that's probably why Naviance is in so many public schools these days. And Naviance also owns College Confidential. That's just kind of a little tidbit, but it's kind of interesting how they have like their hands in different pieces of the system. And there was another company just a few months ago that was acquired, a company called Raised Meat. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. It's a whole nother story about what they do, but they were a company that created this idea of micro scholarships. At the end of the day, a lot of what these companies do, it sounds interesting, but it's really to entice your student, to give them information. That information is shared with colleges in one way or another. Maybe not directly, but it's shared through like, that college marketing on behalf of a college, or that company marketing on behalf of a college. And so it's again, it's a business. I always say the currency of college admissions is student information. It's just the fact, right? Companies are trying to figure out who to market to. Your students are who they're marketing to. Sometimes now they're starting to figure out that parents are who they're marketing to. And the only way they can figure out the best way of marketing to your student and you as a family is to gather as much data as they can about you so that they can improve their targeting. Is that bad? I don't know, but I just like to make people aware. And the reason why I want to make you aware is that when you're giving information to a website or a company, you should just think, wow, what are they going to do with that information? And my last plug before I go on, the companies now that kind of are bugging me the most are companies that are related to financial aid and FAFSA. I think there's nothing wrong with getting help with filling out financial aid forms. Really, if you can do it on your own, great. If you need a little help, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I do really bother me a lot that there's companies now cropping up saying, oh, we'll fill out your FAFSA with us and then we'll submit it to the government. Technically it's all legal, but again, step back, think about what's going on there. You are giving them a ton of financial information, right? That probably you would never give any place else. And sure, they might be, submitting your FAFSA, but in between, they are collecting that data. So And I don't even care if they say that it's what their services are free. It's not free again, because the value is that they now have that information and the data about your financial life. Okay, I can go in much longer on that, but that's just kind of like a warning. And I'll actually send maybe an email a name of a few of those companies. I'm always kind of torn. I don't like to actually give their names because I don't want to kind of promote them more, but sometimes, I want to make people aware, because they are starting to market more heavily these days. Okay, so we're going to go into how do you find merit aid. To me, the way you find merit aid, or the way you kind of handle this whole process, is that you need to take control, right? And the way to take control is that you need to start understanding how the process works. Hopefully for parents with seniors, you have some grasp of it. Parents of juniors and sophomores, this is great that you're starting to learn the system, and it is a system. And the more you know how the game works, so to say, the better you can navigate it. And actually, once you understand the rules of the game, it's really not a hard game to navigate. It's just that it feels like it could be overwhelming. And one of the things that I noticed in this space is that there's what I would call an imbalance of information. And it goes back to what I just said about all this financial information that colleges ask of families. I just gave the example that there are companies now that trying to be intermediaries and asking that information and gathering it. But when you have to fill out financial aid forms, whether it's FAFSA or the CSS profile, that information is going to colleges, right? So they have this big picture of who you are. They have all this information about your student, right? And we as parents and families are like, hardly have information about the college. I mean, we have to kind of dig to get information on their websites, but we don't really know what the cost is going to be until the very end of the process. We don't really know what the likelihood is of our student being accepted. And to me, this is just a pure example of an information imbalance. But the more you become educated, we may not be able to completely right the imbalance, but I'll show you some ways that working with everybody to right the imbalance, but at least you're more aware of what's going on. And again, I go back to, please ask questions to me, but particularly of the colleges, because they should be held accountable, to giving you the information you need. Oop, wrong way, sorry. Okay. Oh, okay. I basically went. So how do you take control? Learn about the whole process, understand the timeline. So important. I mentioned just the deadlines related to merit scholarships, but the unfortunate thing about this process is that once you pass a deadline, you can't really go back. There's not like a redo, and I see a lot that parents in the March, April timeframe, they're like, oh, I wish we knew about that back in the fall, because we would have done it differently. I wish they did too, but that's why I implore people to so much, to learn as much as they can early on, because this is a rolling process, and unless you've got a second child, there's no redo. And even if you have a second and third child, as you can see, this is my third child, and the process has completely changed this year. So you may be more educated, but you still have to kind of learn and see what's happening each year. Ask the right questions, familiarize yourself with terminology. There is, a lot of terminology, but probably if you're a family with a senior, you know a lot of it by now. Okay, I'm glancing over to some of the questions, and I'll see which one I can quickly answer. Okay, so Dominique is asking, might colleges look to bump or match better scholarship offered elsewhere? Absolutely. So basically what you're saying is, if your student is offered a scholarship, is there the possibility that you can go back to that school and say, can you get more money, or can you show them another school that's offering, a similar school that's offering maybe a different amount, and have them match it? I say absolutely try. I can't promise that they will match it, but I have seen a lot of cases where if there's a good case made, meaning, and actually that's why it's so important what we're doing right now. You need to have an example of that other school where your student got in that was giving them a better offer. And it doesn't mean you can't ask the school to up your merit scholarship without it, but it makes it so much more compelling. And that's basically, we call it like a leverage school. You want to have a few schools that, maybe like 2 where your student has a really good likelihood of getting in and therefore a good likelihood of getting a merit scholarship. And, maybe they're not completely interested in going. I wouldn't just put any school on the list and apply, but, hopefully they want to potentially go there, but maybe it's not their top choice. And then you at least have leverage, right? And so the school, the top choice where they wanted to go in, if they didn't give them as much money, you can, as part of the financial aid appeal process and negotiation process, which we'll call it in the spring, you can then go back to that school and kind of say, well, this is really the top school that my student wants to go to, but they have another offer someplace else. And just look, financially, it's tough to turn that down. So yes, so schools are going to match. Should you call, honestly, I'm not going to go into detail about the whole appeal process because that's, again, like a whole session onto itself. And we usually focus in on that after January, because we're focused on getting you guys to research and have and find colleges with merit scholarships. And then after the deadline's over, we'll talk about the whole process of how to negotiate. But the thing I wanted to bring up is that there's been a question this year: are schools going to have more or less money to offer for merit scholarships? It's a great question. I think at this point, all we, meaning people who are kind of involved in this space, can do is hypothesize. But here's my hypothesis. And some of it we've started to see. I think for some schools, like the state schools, they may have less money. And that's just it's just logical. They are, bound by state budgets. And the states are being obviously their other budgets are being crunched because of COVID, and so a lot of state schools are going to get less funding, and that's going to cause them to do. We're already seeing it. I'm actually from Pennsylvania. Some of the Pennsylvania state schools have merged together. And you might see at some of the flagship schools, they're going to maybe, eliminate departments that they aren't as popular. So there's going to be a pruning happening, right, at each school, particularly the state schools. And so when I say we're already seeing it, people have posted in the Paying for College 101 group already. I think it was a New Jersey state school that a woman, which I was very impressed, had been tracking for the past 3 years the merit scholarship offers that the college had posted on their website. And so she had an idea from last year, she thought, of what her student was going to get, and her student got less. And then other people piped in and said, yes, their student got less from that state school as well. So I do think we're probably going to see from state schools, some state schools, that the merit scholarship is going to be less. On the flip side, I think private schools, you actually might see them go higher because this is kind of like the first year, so to say, in this crazy new world, right, of lots of things happening in higher ed. And not every, but a lot of schools had lower enrollment because, kids maybe, taking, there wasn't a ton taking gap years, but a lot of kids stayed home instead of being in the dorms. So that reduced, the revenue for colleges. So I think that private colleges are saying to themselves, you know what, we can't afford to have another year like this past year. So we're going to have to actually spend a little bit more in terms of scholarships to make sure that we can secure those students, because they secure a student freshman year, they have a student for 4 years, right? That's a big deal. So the reason, I'll just give you personal examples why I think that this is going to happen. And again, we will start to see it happen, and we'll know for sure, probably in the December, definitely January, February, March timeframe. But going back to my son, just the other day, we got a phone call to our house phone, which we never answer, but my son and I were sitting next to each other, actually at the table, kitchen table, it was just the two of us. The phone rang. It said the name of a school. I knew it was marketing. I said to him, just pick it up. Let's see what it's all about. I won't even name the name of the school. They got on the phone. My son answered. They started schmoozing him and basically said, because of your great academic, performance that you've had in high school, we're going to offer you an automatic merit scholarship of $24,000 a year. And he had never even applied to the school. He never even asked for information about the school, but they were basically calling to say, we were going to offer you a $24,000 a year scholarship, guaranteed if you apply. Okay. Again, I've had, this is my third child. My other two kids were close academically to my son, not a huge difference. We never got a phone call like that. I was kind of actually shocked and a little sad that the colleges had to go to this level, but that they were calling, guaranteeing a scholarship to a student who had never even shown interest and had not even sent in an application. So that to me, again, is a clue that and it was a private school. The private schools are gonna, put themselves out. They're gonna have to spend more money. My only caveat to this is their willingness to spend money may not be on the first offer. Okay, this is, I wish actually in college I had spent more time studying negotiations. I really didn't, but this is about negotiations, right? And their first offer isn't going to be the best offer, but I think that maybe a second offer will definitely be better than the first, and there might even be a third offer. So I am kind of planting that seed so that you guys can think about that. This all you might not see all of this until the February timeframe, but this is my prediction. We'll come back in March and April and we'll see how things worked out. But my prediction is some state schools are going to be less, private schools are going to be more in terms of merit scholarships. So Rachel's asking, what triggers a second and third offer? Is it simply waiting and not accepting? Could be. So the other thing that triggers it is you going back, you meaning your student, going back and saying, hey, this is my first choice, kind of what I said before. My first choice, I can't financially justify it because I got a better offer from another school. Can you match the school? So proactively, you could trigger a second offer. I have absolutely seen that the people who hold out to the very end, if your student is at the top of the academic range of what that school wants, and they hold out to the end and they kind of keep kind of throwing hints that they're interested, the school may come back on their own with a second and third offer. And this is the other reason why that happens, is because as the school kind of gets towards the end, right, of the decision day, and when other students are kind of saying whether or not they're coming, is a few things happen. One, some students obviously say, no, I'm not coming. And so the money that school had earmarked to potentially give that student frees up. Okay. The second thing is that the closer it gets to this decision day, the school has a better idea of what their yield is, right? So they're now kind of seeing closer what their numbers are. I'm making it up. Maybe 20% of the students yielded and they thought they were going to get 30. So they are going to want to get as close as possible to whatever the yield is that they were expecting. And that's another reason why they might go back to the students who have not said whether or not they're coming and try to offer them to basically solidify the deal. Okay, let me move on before I get too far behind. Oh, okay, yeah. So I won't go into my background too much, other than to say that I spent a lot of years in financial services, working for big mutual fund companies, and then moved to credit cards. And so I was always I did personal finance on a mass market level. And so it kind of intrigued me, and I actually got hired to do consulting work with a student lender a few years ago. And that's how I got involved in this space. It intrigued me that parents didn't have enough of what I thought was the right information, and they didn't have enough of the data, and they didn't have enough of the tools that could help them simplify this process and make them help them make better decisions. So, and one of the areas that I felt that was lacking was there's a lot of information out there. I'm going to say out there, there's in different buckets, and I'll explain where where the buckets are. But you have to be a very sophisticated researcher to know what these buckets of information are, and then to potentially like pull it all together. So it wasn't out there, and I decided to create that, and so that's what College Insights is. It's only been live maybe like 6 or 7 weeks. Before College Insights, I actually sold, and very reasonable, like for in the $45, a spreadsheet with a lot of this data. So all I did was tried to convert the spreadsheet, this is like the first version, to a website to make it easier for everybody to be searching for these colleges that could give merit scholarships. Oops. Okay. So as a little intensive and special, and anybody, I'm going to go and actually log into College Insights, and I'm going to show you how it works. But as a little incentive, I actually have access to 10 free copies of Jeff Salingo's book, Who Gets In and Why. If you're not familiar with Jeff or the book, it's a great resource. It came out like September 12th of this past fall. I did 2 or 3 Facebook Lives with Jeff, which I'll send links to. And he spent a year and a half or so in the admissions office of 3 different colleges, observing the process of college admissions, and by default, the financial aid process as well. So it's a tremendous book and resource to understand how this process works, again, from the college side. And I'm not pushing this other than Jeff did a great job, and just myself reading it, it was a fun, easy read. So it wasn't technical. It was kind of very enjoyable. So I encourage everybody, particularly if you're a family with a junior, to get a copy of this book. It will just it's an eye opener, and you will have a much better understanding about, how this process is operating. Even I learned some stuff, or I should say, I felt like things that I was hypothesizing were happening were confirmed, by reading the book. So anyhow, so my offer is that if anybody ends up signing on and using College Insights, at least for a month or more, we're going to randomly pick 10 people, and you can get a free copy of Who Gets In and Why. Okay, so College Insights, what we did was pull together a lot of detailed admissions information and financial aid information in one place. And the major purpose is for families to learn how colleges offer their money, right? Again, I see a lot of these situations and stories in the March, April timeframe where a family is a little bit shocked that a certain school did not offer their student any money. And some of these schools are schools that you could very, very quickly look up and see that they don't offer any students money. So they're a school that doesn't even give merit scholarships. So the idea that family was expecting some money from a school that doesn't even give merit scholarship just shows that they didn't do the research ahead of time. So so that's why it's important to understand. There's lots of different ways you can phrase it. I say it's the financial aid, or the financial aid policies of the school. I've also kind of called it the financial aid giving history of the school. You can find this out, and I'll show you how. And it's important to know that for every school that your student applies to, it doesn't mean that your student can only apply to a school that's going to give merit scholarships, but if they're applying to a school that doesn't, just know that in advance, so you won't be surprised when the offer comes back and what the price of that is. And then also you want to know this because you want to have a mix of schools on your students list. And the most important thing that College Insights helps people do, and a parent gave me this phrase, and so I kind of continue to use it, and she called it a reverse lookup. So basically, you'll be able to go in and put in some basic stats, and I'll explain why it's just a few types of filters. And then you get the schools that match that, and then you can kind of quickly hone in on which of those schools, give merit scholarships, which of those schools give need-based aid, and you don't have to kind of do a lot of work. So how about now I'm going to switch over to using College Insights, and I'm just going to put the link here because you get, there's 3 free searches. So if you guys want to kind of look at it while I'm demonstrating it, go ahead. So let me just put the link in the chat. Okay. So let me stop sharing this, and I'm going to switch and share another screen. Okay, so do me a favor, just tell me that you are seeing the correct screen here, that you should see College Insights.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Somebody is saying that the link can't be found. Is that true? Did I here, maybe I will put the official. Let me just tell you, the one caveat about College Insights is that it's only accessible or usable on a desktop. We don't have a mobile version yet, and I'll tell you why. But it will be coming, but it won't be coming in the next month or so.
Can't get to it on a laptop here.
You cannot get to it on the laptop?
Nope.
Wow, that's interesting. Here, let me.
I'm looking for typos or misspellings in the address.
Okay, do you want to take the link I just put into the chat? Did you copy that exactly?
The first one, yeah.
No, oh no, do the second one. Maybe I mistyped something. Do this, I put it a second one in. Oh, new link works. Okay, I must have typed something wrong in the first link. Okay. If that person who said they can't get it from the second link, let me know. So I'm showing you exactly what it looks like if you kind of came to College Insights right now. It's blank, but on the left are filters that you can use. So I have to sign in because I don't have the free searches anymore, but basically you should be able to do 3 free searches, and I'll show you how to do the searches. But the first on the top is if you had a specific school or set of schools that you wanted to look at, you would pick the schools, and or you can go to the bottom and you would put in specific preferences, and then it will generate a list. But let me log in.
Hi, Debbie.
Yes.
I am the, hi.
Hi.
I just I went to the link and it's telling me to submit my email and says, we'll get in touch with you shortly. I've never used it before.
Really?
So I'd like to use it live with you now, but I'm not able to. Some parents seem to be able to.
Yeah, I am sorry about that. There must have been, maybe if you could email me and I'll get in touch with you after. We do have like a IP tracking, so it tracks like IPs to see how many times you've used it. I apologize. I don't know why you're getting kind of caught up in that, but that's so it sounds like that our app thinks you have gone to it, and I apologize. So if you can email me, but you can follow along. Because when it asks you for the email, it means that you've kind of used up your 3 times. And I want to kind of, if you can email me and maybe we'll talk for a few minutes because I want to find out what your situation is and I'll show my developers.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I just logged in and you can see there's a whole like table of colleges and college data that that shows up. You can see that we have data for a little over 2,000 schools. There are more schools or more colleges, universities in the US than that, but we narrowed it down to just 4-year public and private schools. That's the people who I generally interact with, the people in the audience of Rhodes College and Payne College 101, that's generally the schools that they're going after. We have ideas, and we might include, community colleges at a later point, but right now where we're at, it's just four-year public and private universities. I'm going to do a few searches. I'm also going to quickly kind of explain the data that's in here, but I'll tell you off the bat, there's 4 sources of data that were compiled here. One is from the government, and it's from a source called IPEDS. It is government data. It is free data. It just, working with the government isn't easy. So, if you have any sort of a tech background and you want to download zip files and everything, you could get a lot of the data that we have here. But you just got to be willing to take those extra steps. So the government, if you are a college that gets any sort of government funding, federal funding, then in return, you have to provide the government with all these different data points. And there's lots, there's like over 300 different data points. So that's one source of information here. I should backtrack 1 second and say that the actual data that we show in this table was not kind of willy-nilly. We didn't just say, oh, we think people are going to want this. We actually did research last year, and we asked parents, particularly in the Paying for College 101 group, we asked them kind of what some parents had before this, had been creating their own spreadsheets. So we asked them what data were they already trying to track and pull in, and then we actually, did like a formal survey of probably like 60 different parents. And so what we show here is what the majority of parents wanted. There are some other categories of data that we might pull in a little later, but this is the basic that people were most interested in. Okay, so I talked about government data that's in here. It's called IPEDS. We match that data with licensed data that we get from what's called the common data set. For those who aren't familiar, again, I could probably do a whole nother session on the common data set, but the common data set is information that colleges supply to 3 companies. And the companies are US News and World Report, Peterson's, and the College Board. So they have an official consortium, and those people, those 3 companies have been doing this for years now, but it was actually the genesis of this was for the US News and World Reports to do their rankings, that they needed this underlying data, and the colleges, agreed that we'll give them this data, and in return, obviously, they'll do the rankings, we'll get publicity, blah, blah, blah. And so that's what turned into what's called the common data set. The common data set overlaps with some of the information that colleges give to the government, but there's also a ton of other really, really interesting information that the colleges don't give to the government. And it's usually a little bit more detailed information related to admissions and related to how the colleges give out their money. And I would suggest that anybody can find an individual common data set for a school by just Googling the name of the school and the words common data set. So I tend to use as examples the schools in the Philadelphia area because that's where I am. But so if you, for example, Google Drexel University and common data set, you will probably find, and it's just easier to do it that way than to kind of search their website. They will bring you to the page on the Drexel website that has probably the common data sets for the last 10 years. And then you click, and the good thing about it is when you see a college's common data set, and this is again why the phrase is common data set, that the format is the same. It should be the same from every school that shows you the data. So you will get familiar if you look at these long enough, you'll get familiar and know the names of the different sections. You'll know that like section H, which I usually go to, has all the financial aid information. I don't know, maybe I can't remember if it's section B or whatever, has the admissions information. So you can quickly hone in on particular information you might be interested in. So that's great, right? But the flip side is that there's not many places that you can go to and see all of the common data set information for all the colleges. That's the data that we licensed, and we combine it with the government data. The third data is there's some little pieces of data that we kind of thought was interesting and we couldn't get our hands on it, so we scraped it. So that, and then the fourth data is what I call crowdsource data. And that is data that we've been collecting for the past 2 years from other families in a combination of in the Paying for College 101 world and just out there, families who are willing to share their data. And what they did was in kind of from the January to April timeframe, we have an app. They they shared what their actual financial aid offers were, or merit scholarships offers were, and then in return for those families that shared that information, we let them see the offers of other students that at the same schools that their kids got offers for. So it was a way for those families to kind of see, was my student, I'll show you that information when we get to it. Was my student offered a fair deal, right? You don't really know. Your student gets this offer. You don't really know, are they giving other students the same offer with my student's profile? Are they giving other students a better offer? You have no way of knowing, right? So by everybody starting to share their information, now you can see, you can kind of judge how good or not good your student's offer was. And then, so we took that information from 2 years. The first year was a little light. Last year was really good. And this year we're going to continue to gather that information. And now that is incorporated into College Insights. So if you're a family with a senior, if you share that information this year, it's free. We call it Compare College Offers. You'll be able to see other families' information as long as you share yours. And then the other benefit is that we, are crowdsourcing this information so families behind you can now also have the benefit. Okay, so that was a lot. So I'm just going to show you that up on the top, you can type in individual schools and get a listing of the information just for those schools. So why is this valuable? Valuable for a few reasons. If you are a family with a senior, again, going back to my comment about you should know whether or not the school gives out money and how they give out money. So if your student already has a list, that's fine. Type or put in every one of those schools into the search bar on top, so that you can, you can put in, you can see already I've put in 5, you can put in 10, you can put in 15, put them all in, and then you can compare them. And so if you search, you'll get the information just for those schools. Okay, and then you can compare. I'm just going to use these schools to quickly go through the data that's here, and then I'm going to ask if there's anybody who wants to give me, what their student is looking for, what their preferences are, and we'll run that search. Okay, but I'm going to again quickly just tell you what some of the data is. Obviously, the first column tells you whether or not this is a public school or a private school. The icon with the columns, with the pillars, it's a public school. All the icon with the little price tag, it's a private school. You can see what state they're from. This region thing is actually a designation from the government. So the government puts colleges into different regions. Whether or not you agree if that's the name of your region or not, can't do anything about it. We're going to go by what the government says. It's just easy for, consistency. And you'll see when you want to search by location, you can pick a region or you can pick individual states. Okay. Oh, somebody's saying my shared screen is not showing your added schools. Okay. So tell me, can people see? I'm on a screen that shows Abilene, Drexel, Haverford, Temple, Villanova. Is that true? Can you see that? Nope.
Nope.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
No.
I'm glad. Thank you. I'm glad you said something. Let me reshare. I think this is a Zoom thing. I thought it would just kind of reshare it.
I can't see anything.
Okay. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Oh, okay, now I could.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry about
Is
that.
Drexel, Haverford, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yes, I see it now.
Okay. Sorry about those guys. And thank you for telling me that you were not seeing what I was talking about. Okay. So I did a search and I put in these specific schools. Again, this is just a sample so that you can see the data. And I was going to go through and tell you what this data means. So type of school, state, region, how many undergraduates there are in the school, the breakout of percent of students that are men versus women. These are kind of all standard. Student faculty ratio, again, just kind of gives you the sense of how large, it gives you an idea of how large the classes are. One thing I want to say about all this type of research or searching and all the data that is here, I call it directional, meaning, student faculty ratio, right? It's directional to give you an idea.
And it gives you how much
Sorry,
money
hold
you
on.
give and stuff like that.
Let me just mute. Okay. So, it gives you a direction of if you're moving in the right direction of finding the schools where your student can get money. Again, kind of to my other comment earlier, that the college website is the ultimate source of information. Is all of this information that I have here accurate? Yes, to the best of our knowledge. I will tell you like a few examples. When I say to the best of our knowledge, this is self-reported information from colleges. So if the college reported it correctly, then we have. There are some cases where you'll see numbers and the numbers just don't make sense and you'll think it's an error. In theory, it's an error, but it's only based on the numbers that the college provided. So again, I'll give you an example. A woman contacted me for Hampshire College and she was very interested. She was researching and she said, the numbers seem really weird. We looked it up together. Yeah, the numbers were weird. We then pulled up the actual college's common data set where they should have the numbers, they should have reported the correct numbers. They misreported their numbers. So in that case, she made me aware. We're trying to actually get the better numbers from Hampshire. Oh, let's say, thank you. There's an alum here. We can only get as good of data as the colleges report. So, but if you see something that's strange, always contact me. We'll dig in to see what the problem is. I will say, actually, yeah, there was actually somebody else who contacted us because there was one school that we had the wrong undergraduate numbers for. Anyhow, it's helpful. I mean, if you see something that's strange, let me know. We will look at it into it and see if we made a mistake or if the college just isn't reporting the right information. Okay, so I was up to student faculty ratio, you got the idea about that. Sophomore retention. This is to give you an idea of how many freshmen return in sophomore year. A lot of people don't necessarily look at it, but it's a valuable and an interesting number. I had somebody contact me after the last session and asked me like or kind of why we decided to look at it and what kind of the threshold that I was saying that people should keep in mind. The threshold is, so the average across all four-year colleges, the average retention rate is about 81%. So if you have a school that's less than the average, I'd be concerned. Would I say don't send your kid to that school? Not necessarily, but again, these all to me are pieces of a puzzle, right? So if that puzzle is kind of like now, kind of like dinging and saying, oh, something's going on here, it means that you need to dig in further and ask the college more questions about what's happening there. So, good schools are going to have retention numbers, in the high 80s, as you can see here, into the 90s. A school that honestly is in the 70s, Abilene's kind of on the edge. Again, I wouldn't say don't send my kid there. I would just find out more about what's going on. Okay, next column, four-year graduation rate. And this will go fast. I'm not going to go through every column like this. Four-year graduation rate. You will be blown away that it is very hard to find the four-year graduation rate. And the reason is because the government only mandates that colleges share the six-year graduation rate. Don't know where that came up with, but that is, what they told colleges that all they need to do. So if you go to a lot of other college search sites, if you go to the government search site, all they show is the six-year graduation rate. Sometimes colleges don't even show the 4 or 5 year graduation rate on their own websites. So Amy's asking about Drexel, and I'll explain that in a minute. And that's actually, I purposely kind of show Drexel as an example. So I I think it's important to understand the four-year graduation rate. Again, does it mean if it's a bad graduation rate, that four-year graduation rate, that you're not going to send your child there? No, it's again, another piece of the puzzle, something that if it looks off, you should ask more questions about it and get the reasoning behind what's going on. So, and basically it's my basic philosophy is if your student can't graduate in 4 years, it means that you're paying for a fifth year, which kind of blows the budget or whatever budget that you were planning on. And not just that, if your student went to the college because they kind of gotten merit scholarships to help make it more affordable, merit scholarships are only 4 years. So if they're going that fifth year, it's a full price fifth year. And that's something you completely want to avoid. So, Drexel, wow, right? You'd say 25% four-year graduation rate, like something's wrong there. It's not that something's wrong, but it's again, a kind of a clue, and you should definitely ask. But I can tell you the reason why Drexel's four-year graduation rate is it's because it's not necessarily a 5-year program, but they have a lot of co-ops. And because of the co-ops, students are going to school for 4 years. So as a parent, you're paying for 4 years of schooling, but they don't graduate until 5 years or sometimes even 6 years. So that's a perfect example of like, wow, if I just looked at the numbers, I'd say I would never send my kid to a school with a 25% four-year graduation rate. But now that you have a little bit better understanding, it makes sense. And so that's not alarming. So I would, and I don't know the reason why behind why Abilene only has a 53% graduation rate. I would definitely ask. That's a little scary to me. Temple is a state school, and they have a big range of students, and so I'm also a little surprised that they're at 49%. My guess is that their 5- and 6-year rates are much higher, but if I had a student that was, maybe not as academically strong and was going to Temple, I'd be concerned that they might not be able to graduate in 4 years. So, okay, let's move on. We have average high school GPA. We have, whether or not the school is test optional or not. Ironically, when we started putting this together back in December, there were on the fewer side, number of schools that were test optional. So the idea of tracking who was test optional, that was a big deal. It's obviously now flipped. I would say 95 or 98% of schools now are test optional. So that's not as valuable information right now. Then we have this whole section on SAT and ACT scores. So we have both the average and the 75th percentile. And the reason why we have both, the average is going to give you, if you match, and I'll show you where you'd be matching. If you match your schools against the average, it kind of gives you an idea of whether or not your student has a good likelihood of being accepted. But if you're interested in making sure that your student is likely to get merit scholarships, you want to make sure that they are in the 75th percentile. That's what the schools are looking at. They are looking at your student's profile against their distribution of students' profile, and they want to match the students that look like the students that they already have that are at the top of their range in that 75th percentile. That's why it's important to know that information. Again, I don't know why a lot of other websites don't share that information, but we think it's important. That's why it's here, and you'll be able to filter based on that. Okay. The next section, the next like 5 or 6 columns is all about the admissions rates. So you're like, well, why don't you just have one column that says the admissions rate? It's because for certain schools, depending if they have early admissions, the overall admission number is blended, and it kind of hides a lot of things that might be happening. So we do have overall admission rate. That's kind of maybe a number you might see quoted by the press a lot, in public. But if a school, and let's look at Villanova, if a school has early decision, then the admission rate for early decision may be significantly different than it is for regular decision and versus their overall admission rate. So Villanova's overall admission rate is 28.2%, but their early decision rate is 56.5%. So that's a huge advantage. I will say, unfortunately, the majority of the schools who are offered early decision, their deadlines have passed, but it's still important to know this if you're a student applying regular decision, because you want to know what the admission rate is for regular decision. And for your families with juniors, this is good to know ahead of time, because you know, this will factor into maybe like how your student decides which schools to apply early to, whether it's early decision or early action versus regular decision. So going with the Villanova example, 56% of there's a 56% admission rate for early decision. The other important information to look at is what percent of the class that they are filling early admission. Villanova's filling a third of their class through early decision, which is actually on the low side. If you look up at Haverford College, a huge difference here, right? Let's look at their numbers. Overall, their admission rate is 16%. If your student had applied their early decision, the admission rate was 43%, and they are taking 56% of their class early decision. So if you don't apply early decision to some schools, it's just more competitive in the regular decision round. Doesn't mean not to apply, but this is just kind of so you have an idea of what's going on behind the scenes. All these numbers are based on last year. Again, kind of part of the hypothesis of things that might change this year. And we will know probably in about 3 weeks when schools start to release their early decision results. But one of the hypotheses is that schools are going to take more students early than they have in the past. And again, you think of schools as a business, it just kind of makes sense, particularly early decision. If they, the more students they take early, the more that they are guaranteeing their revenue, because an early decision student they have to accept, right? So a school, if they take 56% of their class, 58% of their class early decision, they have just guaranteed themselves a certain amount of revenue, and they don't have to worry about yield. Is it fair? Who's to say? It's business, right? And they're doing things to their advantage. Okay. Next important columns are the next, I don't know, 5 or 6 columns. The first 2 are for families that might think that they have financial need. And so the need met is for if you figured out that you have financial need, and I'll just really quickly tell you the way you do it is you have to get your EFC number, which if you're a senior, you already have that from filling out the FAFSA. If you didn't fill out the FAFSA, there are ways that you can estimate it, and I'll send those links, but you need that EFC number. Then you look at your EFC and you compare it to the total cost of the college. And we actually have that information here. Let's go these columns that say in-state and out-of-state total cost or cost of attendance. So I'm making up the example, but let's say for Abilene, if my EFC was $20,000, but the total cost of the school is $53,000, then my need is the difference between the cost of attendance and the EFC. It would be $33,000. And then Abilene is saying that they will meet 71% of that need. So 71% of the $33,000, they will actually offer it in need-based aid. That's okay because you still have to pay for your EFC and you still have to pay for the 29% that they're not meeting of your financial needs. So you still have a lot to cover, but that's why this information is valuable. So if you're a family with need, you're going to want to find the schools that are given the highest, they're meeting the highest percent of need. In this small little example, obviously Haverford is meeting 100% of need. Villanova is meeting 80% of need, but that's really important information to know. For all the families that are looking for merit scholarships, these other columns that are the columns that start with freshmen without need and all the way up to crowdsourced merit offers are important. So Nevin's asking, does need met mean grants and loans? It shouldn't mean loans. It shouldn't mean loans. It may mean grants. But usually that's the money that the school is giving as need-based aid, which shouldn't be loans, to make their percent of need met. Okay, so looking at these columns, freshmen without need. So these are for all the families where you don't have a financial need. I know I hear this all the time, but what do you mean? It doesn't mean I can afford college. 100%, I hear you, but I'm just using the terminology that's used in the college financial aid and admission space. And if your formula comes out so that your EFC is higher than the total cost of the college, then technically you don't have need. I see some of your questions. I'm gonna get to it. So if you don't have need, then your only other way of not the only, but another major way of reducing the cost is to find the college that's going to offer your student the merit scholarship. And when finding those colleges, there's again a whole range. So there are colleges that offer merit scholarships, but they also only offer it to a small percentage of students. They only offer a small dollar amount. So this is where you need to find all that out. So the information that we have here, I'll tell you the reason why we have it. So the first column is freshmen without need. So it gives you an idea of how many students who end up attending that school, kind of how the student population breaks out. So if we're looking at Abilene, basically, a majority of the students have some sort of financial need. Not that it's bad, but it just kind of shows you where the college needs to spend its money. And 24% of the students that attend do not have a financial need. This says 114%. I'll explain that in a second. But basically, the next column is saying of the students that don't have a financial need, how many of them or what percent of them actually get some sort of merit scholarships. Obviously, it's 100% because, but so for Abilene, 24% of the students do not have financial need. 100% of the students are getting some sort of merit scholarship, and the average merit scholarship that's given out is $17,000. The 114% goes back to my comment earlier that if I looked up the numbers that Abilene reported, they probably misreported some information. That's why it's showing up as 114. And so the next column that says merit scholarship categories offered, we took a stab at just telling you how many different types of merit scholarships there are. It's okay information, you don't really need it. But the other thing that we did is we hyperlinked, and I'm not gonna press on it because I don't want to go to another tab that you're not going to be able to see. But if you click on these numbers, it hyperlinks to the page on the website, on the college website, that has information related to the merit scholarships. What we're trying to do in College Insights is save you the time about gathering this data and saving you the time for research. So if we can link to something that saves you time, we tried to do that. And then somebody asked, what's crowdsourced merit-based offers? This is the information that we've been capturing for the past 2 years. So I'll go to Drexel because we obviously have a lot there. So if I click on Drexel, this is an example of, these are actual offers that families shared with us from the past 2 years. We got the majority of them last year. So this was from last year. We have 28 offers. From the year before, we have 6. And what we did is we grouped it by EFC so that you as a family can compare yourself to the other families that shared the information. So if you have an EFC that's between 25,000 and 30,000, you would look at this line down here, and there's probably more on the next page about the types of students that got offers. So in this case, this student, you can see what state they're from. They're from Pennsylvania, what type of GPA, what type of SAT, ACT score they had. Also, when they applied. So did they apply early decision, early action, or regular decision? In this case, this student got a $10,000. Let's go to the next page. So you can see that the range of the merit-based scholarship, there is a range, right? From down here at the bottom, this person got 33,000 versus at the top, this person got 14,000. Let's look at the difference between those two students, right? So the student at the top was from Pennsylvania. They had a 3.5 GPA and a 30 ACT. You compare that to the bottom. That student's from New York, so maybe Drexel is trying to pull in some students, outside the Pennsylvania area. This student definitely has a higher GPA, and it probably, if I did the equivalent, they had a higher, ACT equivalent. So they were a student that was higher on in the percentiles compared to the normal student at Drexel. That's why they got a higher dollar amount. So this is, again, directional information. I wouldn't make an absolute decision on it, but it gives you an idea of how Drexel is giving out money. What's actually going to be most fascinating is when we have a third tab here that says, what colleges are offering this year, and then we can go compare back to what they gave last year, and then they'll really be able to see, did they reduce the amount of merit scholarships, or did they actually increase it? Okay, so let me address the question, because actually the rest of the information is all interesting information on this chart. We tell you if a school has an honors program, which is actually helpful because students who apply and get accepted to honors programs or honors colleges also tend to get higher merit scholarship money. There are a lot of other benefits. There might be, you get better housing. Actually, one of the really important benefits also is that you might get access to apply to get into to classes before other students. So that's actually a really important benefit, particularly if there's a class that's going to cap out faster than others. The other column here says whether or not the school requires a CSS profile. Majority of the schools do not. I think there's only about like 300-ish, somewhere in the high 200s or low 300s of schools that ask that a family fills out the CSS profile. The reason why it is important is depending on your family dynamic situation. If you're divorced, usually it's really if you're divorced, that you might want to make sure your student is applying to schools that only ask for FAFSA versus the CSS profile. And again, if you're a family who's divorced, you'll probably understand, because the CSS profile, they're asking for a lot more information. They're asking for information from both a custodial and a non-custodial parent. The FAFSA only asks for information from the parent where the student lives. So that could actually be a huge, if your student applies to a FAFSA only school, that could be a huge advantage to maybe you're a student getting financial aid, versus if you have to include financial information from both parents or potentially even step parents, that could make a big difference. So that's why we include that information. So there was a question here. Oh, I want to go back to test optional. Of course, it's a very important question. I don't want you to think that I was ignoring it, because so you're probably thinking, if my student, particularly this year, doesn't have a test score, like how can I do all this? And the way you're going to do it, and I'm going to show you that there's two charts, is you're going to translate their GPA, their unweighted GPA, to a test score. And the reason why this is still going off of test scores is because it's based off of, in theory, think about it, it's based off of historical information. It's based off of last year's information. And that's one thing. The second thing, honestly, quite up until this year, although those colleges looked at the GPA, they relied more heavily on the test score to give out money. And so they just have not in the past shared as much information about all the breakouts of their GPA. I don't think that they paid as close attention to the GPA as how they're going to do it this year. So based on data from this year, for the families who are juniors, we'll have a different set of data next year, which will probably have much more detailed information on the GPA. But right now, it's still the best bet to kind of look at this based on test score. And I will show you. So because of that, I have two links that I'm going to suggest that you go to convert a GPA to a test score. And I will put this in the chat. Oops, let's see. Here's one link. That's one, and I will show them too. I just want to get these links into the chat. Okay, let me stop sharing and reshare the right page. Okay, I'm thinking and hoping that you can see. This is just a chart that you take. It gives you take your students, GPA, and it gives you kind of what they expect, based on kind of looking at all the students who might have received an ACT of 28, what their general GPA was, and then it gives you a range. So I would use the range. I would, wouldn't get hung up thinking that maybe my student could have done better than a 28. They might be able to, but that's why you should go with the range. And so the other page I showed you is a similar chart. And so just take the GPA, convert it to a range, and I'm going to go back now and we'll do a different type of search. And I'll show you, when you have a range, the different schools that come up and how you can kind of sort them to get a better idea. Okay. Oh, sorry, I have to do one thing. Let's go back. Okay, now we're back. Okay, so I'm going to, if you press on these three little lines, it brings up the search panel again, and and I'm going to hit reset filters. It just clears whatever I had in the filters, and then we're going to go search by preferences. Let me get this chat. Okay, so so while I explain this, if anybody wants to put in the chat kind of there are students, just for ease of purpose now, if your student has a test score, what their test score is, if they have a particular major that they're interested in, and any location preferences, and they don't have to have a major and they don't have to have a location preference, but if they do, tell me what they are, and I'm going to pick one or two of them, and we will we'll use that as the search criteria. But while you guys are putting in that into chat, I want to explain to you that there's only a few preferences that we have here: major, location, the size of the school, and the test score. For the test score, you can match it against the average, which I showed you, or you can match it against the 75th percentile. So the reason why we only have these 4 is because, again, the goal of College Insights was to give you direction to find the colleges where your student is likely to give merit scholarships. If you narrow things down too much too quickly, you may never see a college that actually could be more generous to your student, because you've quickly, meaning you and your student, have quickly decided that you only want a school that has, Greek life, because that's like a more detailed criteria that's in some of the other search websites out there. We didn't want you to kind of think that specifically yet. We wanted you to cast a wide net and then narrow down. And I'll show you different ways to narrow down once you see the wider net. And honestly, to be knocking out schools based on things like, kind of the softer preferences, like, living on campus, or what type of dining that they have, and, Greek life. I think that's like way down the search criteria. I actually wouldn't even use that to knock out a school. I would use that at the end, after you get your student gets their acceptances, to use that softer evaluation. But I really wouldn't use it up front. Okay, so let's take somebody. This is just a broad open one. Okay, somebody, a student said their student is a 4.0 GPA. Okay, I'll show you how we use that a little later. That they have a ACT of first of all, they're interested in education. So let's put that in. Let's see if there's anything more generic than just administration of special ed. Oh, here, education general. Okay. So pick that as the major. This person said they have no geographic preference. So I'll do somebody with a geographic preference after that. And then they have a 35 ACT. So I would go down here and I would pick a range. I would actually pick, and you could do the 34 to 36. And actually, why don't I do that? Then actually I would come back and broaden the range. So this is all kind of exploration, right? And if you're looking for merit scholarships, we're going to match it to the 75th percentile. Okay, so, and we didn't put in a location, right? So there's 20 schools where that test range of a 34 to 36 is in the 75th percentile, and the school has education as a major. So let's see. I mean, and they're all like the top schools because that's a great ACT. But if you want a school that has merit scholarships, you can quickly click this little pre-tab on top. It says merit scholarships. And these 16 schools have merit scholarships. You have to look a little carefully because, again, I know that we're looking at some of the elite schools. We're going to scroll quickly to, well, first of all, as you can see, if you were a family that had financial need, these are schools that are really generous for financial need. They're meeting 100% in most cases. NYU, sticks out, but they're really trying to meet the family's financial need. My guess is the majority of the families watching aren't going to fall into that bucket. You're going to fall into, wanting merit scholarships. So, as you can see, even though these schools came up as offering merit scholarships, they're still on the stingy side. That's what I would say. So Bowdoin offers merit scholarships, but they're only offering it to 5% of the 50% of the student population that don't have need. So they're not offering, and they're only offering $1,000. Okay, that's not going to cut your tuition costs. Brown, I mean, this is they're probably offering it to 5 students. That's why it came out to be, 0.21%. Let's see, NYU, also not a generous school for merit scholarships. They're offering it to 8% of the students, and they're, offering $48,000. So again, these schools kind of give merit scholarships, but very, very, very small amounts into a very small number of students. Let's just kind of scroll through. Actually, here, what I would do is I would sort this column. Okay, and so now I can quickly see who's at the top. So USC, of this small group of colleges, might be your best bet. They're saying that they give 42% of families without financial need, they give them merit scholarships, and they give them, just under $20,000. That's a good amount. I happen to know USC is very expensive, so that's still going to be an expensive school, even with a merit scholarship. And again, now I happen to have showed USC as the example. You better go find out what those deadlines are because it's December 1st, not that much time left. So if your student wants to apply there, they better hurry up. So actually you can see most of the other schools on this list, they give out money, but it's not that generous. So that's why I would go back. Let's go back and I would broaden the list. Broaden the ACT range. I would bring it down to 32 and then see what schools fall in that category. Okay, so we doubled it. So there were 20 schools before, now there's 42, and 38% of them give merit scholarships. And you can see now there's more schools on the list, more schools that are going to be more generous with higher dollar amounts. So the first school is offering 97% of the students without need a merit scholarship of $25,000. St. Olaf is again offering 94% of the students without need, $18,000. So we're starting to find schools that are more generous. And if your student, and particularly this one had a 35, is kind of way above the 75th percentile, then the numbers here are averages. You are probably going to get above the average than what's listed here. So let's just look at like St. Olaf, because what I would now do is scroll back and look at the ACT ranges for St. Olaf. So the 75th percentile is 32. This student had a 35. Again, just to confirm, they will probably get way above the average. And then if you wanted to, you can also look at their GPA. This student had a 4.0 GPA. Again, if your student applied to the school, they would be way above the average and they would get a merit scholarship. So I guess to me, this example is this particular student seems, very academically strong. They should apply to a range of schools, apply to some reaches, apply some, I'm assuming with that score, maybe they're interested in some of the elite schools, apply, know off the bat that you're not going to get any money from those schools. And then make sure you have a set of schools that you are more confident and have a much higher likelihood that you will get money from. And then my whole thing is that in the March, April timeframe, that families have choices, that you have options, right? You have, if your student got into that REACH school and maybe it just makes them feel good, that's great. But if the reality is you still can't afford it, that's fine. But now you got to have the option of the school where you can afford and that they're going to be happy to attend. So if you don't, you need to do this research now so that you have the options later. Okay, let's reset the filters. Let's pick somebody else with maybe, okay, I'm going to pick here okay, I'm going to pick the example here. This person has a SAT of 1250. They want civil engineering, also no particular location. So we'll see what's out there. Oops. Okay, so the major is civil engineering. There it is, civil engineering, and a 1250 SAT. Again, 1250, I would probably pick a range of 1300. I would pick to 1100. You know, again, you can go back and you can pick 1200 to 1300, but let's just pick it with 1100 as the range. And then let's see what comes up. Wow, 109 schools. Oh, and it's claiming that all of those schools give some type of merit scholarships. So that's a big range. This is why, again, I don't like to narrow it down too quickly. You might see this range and decide, okay, now we understand what's out there, but we really want schools in certain regions. That's fine. Go back and you add your states or your regions, but at least you've seen the possibilities. So let's go to the columns with merit scholarships. Okay, these are already sorted in order. Again, California Baptist University isn't giving 220% of the students, you know, merit scholarships. Their numbers are probably wrong. But my guess is if only 5% of their students don't have need, they're probably giving 100% of them some merit scholarship. But, you know, you can kind of, we can research that later. But so this student was interested in civil engineering. And you can see there's a range of schools, a lot of schools that are giving a large percentage of the students who have no need. They're all getting some form of money, which is great, right? But you might obviously want to look at the average amount of what the merit aid is. And let's just kind of look at Quinnipiac. And so they're giving, let's round it up, 18,000. And now I would go over and look at what Quinnipiac's cost of attendance is. So even though 18,000 a year, that's a pretty good amount of money, it's an expensive school. So you're only taking 18,000 off your 69,000. So it's still going to be expensive. But now at least you have an idea before your student even applies. And again, that's the average. If your student is above the average, you will definitely get more. And going back to the very beginning of this presentation and the conversation I had about having leverage schools, you might want to put Quinnipiac on your students' list. You're not 100% sure if they'll actually end up going, but if there's another school where your student isn't as high up in the, maybe in the top percentile, they might still get money, but they may not get as much merit scholarship money as you would have liked, but then they end up getting a lot of money from Quinnipiac. Well, then you can kind of use that to say, go back to whatever the #1 school is and say, hey, I'm glad my student got in, or the student says, I'm glad I got in. I'm glad you gave me money. I'm really excited about it, but it just isn't going to be enough for me to financially come. I got money from this other school and they gave me more. Would you be willing to match it? So that's the importance, lots of importance of doing the research now, but that's one really important reason why I have been harping on merit scholarships between now, and I don't want to keep harping on it until January 1st, because if you're going to add schools to your students list and they have some essays, you know, they need time to do those essays, but now is a perfect time. There's 6 weeks left before before regular decision deadlines. And if you've never done this research, here's a quick and easy way to do the research. And if you have done this research, but it wasn't that easy, and now you want to see if you've missed any colleges, that's the reason why you should look into College Insights. So the other question I get a lot is, there is a monthly fee to this. It's $24.99. I think that's pretty reasonable. Absolutely, particularly for families with seniors. I mean, you're only going to need this for a month. I don't blame you. I've had people email me and say, is it okay for me to sign up and then immediately cancel? Yes. If you sign up, you get use of it for a month. You can cancel too the same night. So you don't want to forget, you still have use of it for the month. I'm fine with that. I just want people to do the research and, find colleges that they may not have known about to put on the students list, and that hopefully they end up getting merit scholarships. I don't have a ton more or slides to go through, but I will let me look through and see if there's any other questions. So somebody's asking, does this website mention important dates and deadlines? It does not yet. We don't have deadline information. We will have that in the next kind of upgrade of data, but we didn't put it in right now. We were focusing on the numbers related to merit scholarships. This is a first version of what we're doing. So there is a lot of data here. I gotta get that comment. I get it. So we're gonna, in the next round or variation of College Insights, we're going to make it easier for you to kind of delete columns that you might not want to see or move columns around. And we'll also include some of the deadline information. So it's coming. Okay, so somebody's asking, when do we need this? Now or when my student is accepted? If you have a senior, you need this now. Again, sign up 1 month, that's fine. It's gonna do you no good to get this, to sign up for this when your student is accepted. Everything that I talked about being able to see other people's offers is a free service. We don't charge for that. That is all of us honestly working together to kind of share our information. And, that's something, we want to make free. We are just facilitating having that happen. So that we're actually going to put out that link probably about 2 more weeks about where you can share your schools and then see what other people are sharing. And then once you do that, you should probably come back every few weeks to kind of see what else has been added, because, at the first, there'll be a lot of students who apply early decision or early action. We'll get that information. And then as the season goes by, we'll be getting information from other students who might have applied regular decision. Okay, let me go back to other questions. Okay, this whole question about weighted GPA and unweighted. We could do like another session on that as well. The GPA that's listed here is supposed to be unweighted. I know that there are some schools that listed it as above 4.0, but they're supposed to are looking at unweighted GPA. Schools in general are taking students' GPAs and they're taking the unweighted values and they are recalculating it on their own, whatever their calculation is for that particular college. And the reason why they're doing that is because schools across the country approach, calculating high school GPA very differently. And so colleges can't rely on comparing a weighted GPA from one school against a weighted GPA from another school. And so they basically strip all that away and then take the high school unweighted GPA, and then they add their own weights to it if they want to, based on the rigor of the school, and they calculate it. So may or may not be fair. I know, but that's like a whole nother discussion. Let me also just say that I send a follow-up email. It will come tomorrow with a link to this recording and to any of the links that I've shared in the chat. So the 2 charts I'll include there. So don't worry about if you didn't copy it down. Okay, so the question about, do I think that it would hurt a student's chance of receiving merit money if they have a very high GPA but didn't score as well on their ACT but submitted the scores anyway? I don't know. It's a very good question. To tell you the truth, if your student has a great GPA this year and their scores, the test scores are not as good, I would compare their test scores to the average and to the 75th percentile. If their scores around the average and their GPA is much better than the school's average GPA, I think I might recommend that you not send your students test scores in, because this is a year more than any year that it's going to help the student who does really well in school and has a great GPA, and that same student who might not test well. This is a year that's really going to benefit that type of student. So I would be careful or think really closely about which schools you might want to send the test scores to, and I would compare the test scores versus the average versus the 75th percentile. And I cannot tell you, it's still a little bit of a black box, what admissions offices are going to look at and not look at what you sent in. So I can't tell you that they won't look at the test score. So I would be on the safe side. And if it's test optional and the test score is not that good, but the GPA is great, I might not send in the test score to that particular school and make it a school by school decision. Okay, so somebody said after they processed the FAFSA, their EFC was on a report, was in a code. What does that mean? So a lot of when you immediately get your EFC after filing the FAFSA, it's kind of weird that they don't actually show it to you as a dollar amount. They might show it to you as like 25164. So just take away the front loaded 00s, and the rest of the numbers are your EFC. It seems simple enough that they should kind of just format it into a dollar amount, but they don't. Should we look for merit scholarships or after a student has been accepted into a particular school? Really good question. If a school gives merit scholarships, I would not wait to look for it after they've been accepted. Absolutely do the research now, because if a school is giving merit scholarships, they're giving a lot of them away during the actual, admissions process and review. There may still be some scholarships that they give out after a student is accepted, and sometimes those are more departmental scholarships. So once your student is accepted and they are majoring in engineering or education, that department might have their own scholarships. So you could and should ask about that after they've been accepted, but I wouldn't rely on that, and I would do the research beforehand. And that's actually another thing to kind of keep in the back of your head. After your student is accepted, have them call. This is a great question for them to call the admissions office and say, I'm not sure if, financially my family's going to be afford this. Are there any other scholarships the school offers that I don't know about that I could apply for? And hopefully the admissions office, will tell you yes or no, but if yes, they'll direct you. But there might definitely be other scholarships at that school that only apply to students once they become accepted or admitted or enrolled. And so pursue them, but don't rely on that, do the research beforehand. Okay. I don't see a ton of other questions that I think that we've already covered. So the question somebody asked, is this tool primarily for merit scholarships? Yes and no. A primary goal was to make it simpler for families to find colleges that also give merit scholarships. But as you can see, I think that there's lots of other ways that you can use this tool. If you're a family that needs financial need, you can target the schools that are going to offer you more financial need. You can get a better understanding of the admissions strategies of different schools. You can sort schools by total cost by looking at, the in-state or versus out-of-state numbers. Some of the other information at the end, which I didn't kind of go into, is we also include information on loans. I think it's important to know the students that are graduating, kind of what type of debt level that they have when they graduate. So we have loan information relative to freshmen, meaning what percent of freshmen are taking out. To me, the important loans to understand is what students are taking out, honestly, loans that are beyond the federal limits. And if you don't know the federal limits, that's a whole nother conversation, but we'll be teaching people about student loans. But basically, the federal government only gives out a certain amount of money to a student. Each year it varies. The freshman year is $5,500, then it goes to $6,500, and junior and senior year is $7,500. So if the student has to borrow beyond that amount, which some do, and it's not unreasonable, either the parent has to borrow it as a parent plus loan, or the parent has to co-sign on a private loan. And that's the numbers that it's pretty reasonable, and the majority of students are going to take out federal loans. That's not unusual, and actually that's not a heavy debt burden. It's when you have to go past the federal limits, and how far past the federal limits is when you can potentially get into trouble, or the student can. So that's why I think it's important to look at the percentages of freshmen who have to borrow non-federal loans. So that means that they are borrowing private student loans. So, you know, I mean, so I'm just looking at these numbers. You know, a school where only 4% of the students are borrowing non-federal loans, that's fine. That's, you know, not a high debt burden. Quinnipiac, this goes back to the example I showed you. They give merit scholarships, but also it's a very expensive school. You can quickly see, I'm just looking at the ones that are on the screen here, that 18% of freshmen have to borrow past the federal limit, and they're borrowing $24,000 a year. This is per year. So that can start to add up. So that's looking at freshmen. We also included loan numbers relative to students when they graduate. So again, what percentage of students are graduating with any type of loan, and then what's the average balance of the loan? To me, you know, and just important information to know. And then we have endowment per student. This gives you a sense of, I guess you could say, the financial health of a college, but it's really kind of like how much cushion do they have in case, you know, they have to dip into extra financial resources. And again, just kind of quickly looking at the numbers here, Quinnipiac, you know, is doing okay. So their endowment per student is $47,000 versus University of Mount Union. I don't know much about it, but that's $57,000. And of course, you will see that the more elite schools, or the wealthier schools, they probably have an endowment, you know, over $100,000 per student. So you start to see the range of which school is going to weather any sort of financial rockiness versus another school. And that doesn't mean the school is going to go out of business, but it means that, you know, if there's a big downturn in enrollment, that school might have more financial troubles than a school that has more endowment money. So Janine's asking, does this tool give you information on percent of students that graduate and have their loans paid off by their job, like some medical grads get? We don't have that information. It sounds like great information. You know, I'll add it to the list to see if we can get it. I mean, probably it won't be the next round, but maybe the round after that. But it sounds like good information to look for. But Janine, what I would say is that if it sounds like maybe your student is going for pre-med, I would ask the schools this information. It's a, you know, we don't yet have information in this tool about job placement, you know, which is really important, right? Because you want your student to go to school, you want to be able to afford it, you want them to be able to graduate, and even if they might have some loans, you want them to be able to get a job that they can pay back the loans. We don't have that information yet, but we're going to add that next. But even if we add it, it won't be detailed enough that I tell families to absolutely ask the question to the admissions office or to the career services office. You know, research the career services office as much as you would research your student's major. So, you know, ask them what type of companies come to recruit, ask them how they manage recruiting, ask them, you know, how they help students get internships, all that type of information. It's fair game. You should ask, and they should be able to answer that information. You can go specifically also to the department. So you can ask the departments, like, you know, if your student is a computer science major, you know, where are these computer science graduates getting their jobs? You know, they should be able to tell you that. And I will tell you, you know, again, I mentioned this in the beginning, my student is I have my own son who's a senior. we spent a lot of time this year because we can't visit that much, looking at college websites. We saw a huge range of really good colleges that had really good websites and other colleges that didn't have such good websites. And they kind of ran the gamut of colleges that have great reputations, like brand names versus, there were some brand name colleges that had really lousy websites. But I'll tell you one that stuck out in my head. It was Cornell. We were looking at Cornell, and what I loved about it is that they had great pages for each major, and then on each page of the major, they told you, it wasn't even hard to find. They told you where graduates got jobs. They named the names of the colleges. They gave you, named the name of the companies, and then they gave you the percentage, like, whatever, 6% of students went to this type of job, 10% of students went to this job, 8% of students went to graduate school and went to law school. I just thought that was fabulous information that I didn't have to dig for, and it was right there in front of me. So, Charis is asking, does this tool have the average salary information in 10 years? Not yet. We're going to add it. That is information you could get in 2 sources if you wanted to go look. The sources are, one's a company called PayScale, and I'll include that in my follow-up email. PayScale is a great place to look at, and also Georgetown. I don't know the official name for that, but Georgetown has like a center of education where they do a lot of research. They were the ones that put out the study that looked at like the 10-year projection of different majors and what the salaries are. And they actually might have had the study on the net price, the long-term value of different majors and salaries. So I will put those links in. Those are 2 great sources to look at. Okay. So, oh gosh, guys, I went for 2 hours, even though I was trying to get through this faster. So I am sorry to keep you on this long. And I hope that this was helpful. Feel free, send me questions. I try and answer as many as possible. And good luck. I might do this one more time, but I'm hoping that one more time before the end of the year. I'm hoping that the families with seniors, that you're doing your research now. I don't want to be doing this like 2 weeks before the January 1st deadline and people with seniors to still be joining. So I'm hoping that you guys join now and do your research and maybe, spend the month of December doing applications. I just hate that feeling of people, like I know sometimes we all have to do last minute things. Believe me, I do it and my son has done it, but this is too important to kind of leave it to like 2 weeks before January 1st. And if you're a family with juniors, I'm going to do this many more times. And hopefully by the time we do it again, maybe I'll have more information. And for the families with seniors, in January, we're going to flip and start talking about, financial aid negotiation, how you do that, start talking about loans, federal and private loans. So that's like another process, or there's all these phases, right, to this process. And so how you evaluate your student's offer is important to understand. How you make that final decision, you and your student make that final decision. We're going to show you how you project out the 4 years, because I hope you really do. Sometimes people make decisions just on what the first year is going to cost them, but you really obviously you're making a 4-year commitment. You need to look at 4 years, and we're going to talk about all that stuff kind of, but after the new year. Okay, everybody. Hope you have a good night. Happy holidays. Start and have a safe and happy Thanksgiving with just your small family. And I will see everybody soon. Bye.
Thank you, Debbie. Bye.
Bye.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you too, everyone.
Thank you. Great job.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Appreciate you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Debbie.
Awesome.
Thank you.